I'm about to name our first runner-up and then the new title holder. Both are important roles because if the new title holder is unable to fulfill her reign, then the first runner-up will advance to the title.
The idea of being Miss Something was something I always saw at a distance. I would watch TV, I'd watch Miss Universe. I'm like, oh my God, these women are so beautiful. I want to be like them. I want to be so well-spoken. I want to do all the fun things, right?
The first runner-up is Tiana Cooks, Miss Cimarron Hills, USA. The new Miss Colorado USA 2024 is Jessi Kalambayi.
Hey CT, my name is Celestine Demulu, and today I got to sit down with Jessi Kalambayi to talk about her experience to becoming Miss Colorado USA 2024.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessi Kalambayi and I am Miss Colorado USA 2024.
What was your journey to becoming Miss Colorado USA 2024 like? Can you just walk me through that?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty short journey, if I'm being really honest. I thought about pageantry for a long time, more so as a very distant dream, because I was watching as a fan. I admired a lot of the women who had walked these different stages over the many years. But at the end of 2023, I was kind of looking for something new that I wanted to do in my life, something that I could tick off a bucket list. And that's where kind of the idea of pageantry came on my heart. And so I decided to take a leap of faith. And I submitted an application at the end of January. I was accepted. And then I was able to have the local title of Miss Denver for some time, Miss Denver USA. Then from about January till about May, I had this local title, and then I went on to compete as Miss Colorado USA in June, where I won the weekend of the 28th through the 30th. So it was actually a pretty short journey, if I'm very honest, but it was a very, very impactful one because I really got to see myself really being committed, determined, and just seeing God move in my life through this journey. So it's been amazing.
That's amazing. If you had to describe your journey in 3 words, what would it be?
I would say it's one, been impactful. It's been challenging, but it's also been full of miracles. I definitely would say those are the 3 ways that I could put it, because in many ways I feel like my journey has been so impactful because of the people who I've been able to impact through just winning in such a short time, but also just being able to see the people from my own community who've been inspired by me just taking this leap of faith. It's definitely been challenging because there's a lot of things about pageantry that people don't know, and then when you're introduced to it for the first time, it can catch you off guard. But there is no challenge that I honestly feel that you cannot overcome if you really have a goal. But ultimately, I'm grateful because at the end of it, there was a big miracle that happened for me, and now I'm here.
What made you pursue this dream? As your roots, you were originally a model. So what made you pursue, just becoming into the pageantry system?
Yeah, so I've always kind of had the modeling side of me, despite the work that I do. I've always been within the nonprofit space, working currently in academia as well, supporting the refugee and immigrant population. But being a model was also a huge part of my identity. I think that's something that was so important to me. I love being in the fashion and beauty space. It allows me to express myself in a creative sense, even though I really don't feel like I have a creative bone in in me. But I think I really wanted to do more than just be what we call a co-hanger within the fashion space. I wanted to be able to use my personal voice for something that was bigger than me. And so I've always felt like pageants was a perfect medium between being able to wear glamorous, pretty dresses, but also being able to talk about something that's very important to you. And so that's why I decided to take the pageantry route. So it kind of mixes my 2 worlds together.
You've spoken about your background and being a first-generation Congolese American. Mm-hmm. How has your background just shaped your confidence in pageantry and just, your whole journey?
Absolutely. I think being such a multicultural person, because of course being ethnically Congolese, but then having lived also in South Africa and then also being American has really shaped how I see the world. I feel like I have such a multicultural view of the world. It allows me to connect to so many different people. It allows me to really just see the world in such a different way. And so I felt like pageantry, you're in a space where you're constantly meeting new people, you're interacting with, you're representing a huge community, and that community doesn't always look exactly the same. And so having that cultural background really gave me the foundation to be able to connect with people on a personal level, just because I know what it's like to come from so many different spaces and just different stories, and hopefully I was able to represent actually more than one population of people by taking on this role.
The journey to Miss USA was really challenging. As you know, you made top 10, which is amazing.
Thank you.
Was there any moments where you just felt like you doubted yourself or anything like that? And how did you push through it?
Absolutely. I think first, it's important to know that I was not prepared to win on my first try. So that in itself set me up to not almost be mentally ready to go to Miss USA, because I was expecting, I could do well for my first state pageant, but I'm not sure that I could win. So when I won, it was like an overnight change that I had to get ready for. So getting ready for, what are you going to do for the state costume? What are you going to wear? How are you going to present yourself? So it's a lot of logistics that goes into that I was not quite prepared for, but I had a wonderful team who tried to make my journey as seamless as possible. And so I definitely say preparing myself for that was really just jumping in head first, really just embracing it for what it is and understanding that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not very often that you get to say that you're Miss Colorado USA. It's not very often that you get to say that you get to go to Miss USA. So despite the challenges and the fears that I had, I was like, hey, I'm here. So I'm just going to embrace it for what it is.
What's one piece of advice, maybe it's a quote or anything that helped you for preparing for Miss Colorado USA 2024?
I think one, accepting that the entire world is not going to accept you. I think we know as Black people, as Black women, that the world views us particularly sometimes in a different way because of our beauty, because of our history, because of who we are culturally in different spaces. So accepting that not everybody is going to accept you is something that you have to understand first. Because sometimes because you're different or you're the only one in the room, people might not understand, why does your hair look like that? Why do you speak that way? Why do you dress that way, right? And so because I was firm in who I was, I always wanted to do something represent myself with natural hair. And I knew that it wasn't very common for some people, because it's not always how Black women are represented in beauty, right? I knew that some people would not be comfortable with that, but I was okay with that. So I think that as a Black woman, if you are entering into this space, or in any space for that matter, don't let the opinions or the critiques of the world define how you present yourself. Always remember how would you like to be remembered? Who would you like to see when you look back at this video 20 years from now? And for me, I know that, oh my God, I'm so happy I did this with the Afro, because that's just who I am. At the end of the day, that's who I am. And I know that that's something that nobody can ever take away from me. So I think remembering that, who you are, your identity, and being okay with critique is definitely going to help you in anything, not even just in pageantry, honestly, in anything at all.
Breaking barriers and inspiring many people. Do you feel any pressure to represent and stuff like that? And how do you combat that?
If I'm being real, yeah, I definitely think there's definitely a pressure to be the right Black woman. What I mean by it is Black women are often seen as a representation for every Black woman, even if we're not a monolith. We're not just one group. We're so different. We all have different stories and identities. But if you are the Black woman that's chosen, you're the Black woman that almost sets the standard for everybody else. So there's definitely a bit of pressure on that. But I also always remember that I am who I am, and there are people who will relate to me, people who won't. But what's most important is that I am standing firm on what my actual identity is, not putting on a facade to appease certain people or to try to put on this fake representation for everybody, because I don't represent everybody. Yes, I may represent a Black woman, but I don't represent all Black women, because I think it's important that we realize that we are a community of different people and we should be able to embrace that about us. So yes, there is pressure, but I think just embracing the fact that I'm just a really small percentage of the plethora of amazing Black women that exists allows me to just be myself, honestly. That's okay.
Growing up, did you ever see yourself as Miss Colorado USA? Did you ever think something this big was even possible?
I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to look in the camera to say this. No, I did not. truth to God, I did not. I know people will be like, oh no, you definitely did. I absolutely did not. The idea of being Miss something was something I always saw at a distance. I would watch TV, I'd watch Miss Universe. I'm like, oh my God, these women are so beautiful. I want to be like them. I want to be so well spoken. I want to do all the fun things, right? But I never quite saw myself in that role. I think it's also because I also did struggle with confidence growing up. I absolutely felt very insecure about my space in society, about where exactly I should have been. But I think as I grew closer to God and I was more open and receptive to what He wanted for me, I think He opened my desires to actually be a part of it. Even though it was something I've always imagined, like dreamed, like, oh, I wonder if I could do it. I didn't know that I could actually be it. But once I got there, I was like, oh, I was always meant to be here. So the short answer is definitely not, but I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
What message do you have to high school students, especially those who feel like they don't fit in the mold?
Yeah. This may sound cliche, but I also didn't feel like I quite fit in anywhere. Like I said, I come from a very different background. I've lived in 3 different places. And so that has shaped a huge part of my identity. So it's often times where people ask me kind of like, where do you feel like you're from, or what kind of community do you feel like you fit in perfectly? I was never quite able to answer that question because I don't. I don't think I was created to fit into a box, and I think that's what makes me unique. So for anybody who feels like they don't fit in, they're not quite sure where their spot in life is, I think embrace the fact that you don't fit in. Embrace the fact that you are a collection of so many different things and different qualities, because that ultimately can propel you to be the one that shines, to be the one that ultimately stands out of the crowd. Because being sometimes the one that doesn't fit in can be difficult, but it can also be to your advantage if you're just willing to embrace it. So I encourage anyone in high school who's struggling through that to just look at those qualities and look, how can I use this to my advantage? And I think that's what I did. I didn't try to fit in. I just was, hey, I can only be myself. So that's exactly what I encourage anybody to do.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to some students who want to chase these big dreams but are afraid to start?
For me, it was important to understand why I was doing it. I think it's very easy to think I want to be a pageant queen because I get to have the crown and this title and, you know, the influence and the popularity that comes with it, which is appealing to many. But for me, because it was ultimately about, I felt pushed by purpose. I'm a huge person who believes in purpose. And for me, making sure that I was living out my purpose for God was really important. And I always felt like these 2 roles was something that God gave me, and I wanted to be able to pursue that. So understanding your why is really important. Why are you doing what you're doing? And then when you figure out that why, it's going to give you a solid foundation to which you start. Because when it gets challenging, because trust me, it will. You will have days where you might cry. But when it does get challenging, you will always have something firm to stand on, because you know the reason why you were doing this in the first place. And it's going to push you to continue to fight, even when the going gets tough, honestly. So just remember your why, and then have a strong identity in that. Then you can be able, honestly, to pursue anything.
If you could sum up your message to young people, what would it be?
I think my message would definitely be to remember that you have a right to dream, and you have a right to dream big. Everybody has something in their heart that God has placed that only God knows why He gave it to you, because He knew that you would be able to nurture it. I think take that feeling and run with it. But not only run with it, but run with it with God. But then pursue it, because I would never want any young person, or even myself, to live a life where we've never pursued the things that truly were at the core of our hearts. So please dream big. Never let anybody tell you that you can't be the president, you can't be an attorney, you can't be a pageant queen, you can't be a photographer. Like, don't let people tell you that. And sometimes it means going against what the norm is. I mean, it's not very normal to come from communities where we do things like this, but I decided to go against that because I truly believe that something good would come out of this. So if it means defying sometimes what the norm is in the community, then do that. But if it means that you're pursuing the dream that God gives you, then you're doing it right.